I'm like, and I must have paused for like 10 seconds. And she said, "Are you okay?" I said, "I'm fine." She said, "What's up?" I said, and I just run by thinking it was me that was asking her for a and then helping her out the chair. Suddenly she's up and she's forgotten that she's not able. She just got up. She's confident. She's independent. She started to go back to the Wellbeing Cafe. She started to go back to bingo. She started to connect with her friends. So this is not just a physiological increase. This is a life-changing quality of life, which for me, I thought to myself, I have to really look at now how I can dedicate the rest of my life towards bringing this to the world. And of course, when you get in the world of business, it's how do we take these complex issues, simplify them, and then get them to as many people as we can, and how do we democratize it so it's affordable? You know, at the time I was in a good position financially, and I was able to buy the machine and really help my grandmother, but not everybody has access to that. So then it's the case of how do we bring it into centres, collaborate with people like yourself that are truly wanting to impact the world. And remember, if your shoulders are back, one thing I noticed with my grandmother when she was kyphosis, she was leaning over. She's leaning over her lungs, so when her shoulders are back, her lungs are more expanded, oxygen's now breathing more.
Absolutely.
Now she's not looking down, she's looking straight forward, which is a better day in the office because you're looking where you're going. And what we find a lot of the time is that something what people can do versus what they will do is very different. So with biodensity, people can get access for the first time and get all the benefits of a gymnast without the risk of any injury. And when you look at Wolff's Law, and that's over 100 years worth of research, that if we can compress bone in an axial format, meaning bone to bone, and compress it, we know this stimulates, compresses bone and helps to recalcify and pull minerals in. So therefore, if somebody's low in calcium, magnesium and other things, then we need the body to adapt and stimulate and recalcify. We don't just want to give somebody protein to go and building muscle without going to the gym. And it's the same with bones. So the expectation from a physical point of view is that we can provide a safe environment with education, awareness, support, where they can come one time per week for less than 15 minutes and get access to, I would say, strengthening the nervous system. I mean,
hello friends, thanks for tuning in. Glad you can check us out. And I have to tell you, in this episode, I had the chance to talk with Mr. Gary Rhodes. So let me tell you something. This was one of the most interesting discussions I have ever had. Gary works a lot with the bioDensity technology and also with the PowerPlate. We talk a lot about both of those modalities, both of which I have here in my clinic here at Neuromotor Training, just outside of Syracuse, New York. So if you have watched any of my previous episodes or see any of the posts on social media, you know that we use the bioDensity machine and the PowerPlate. We're very lucky to have the top end PowerPlate here. And the benefits people realize from these machines are absolutely amazing, and they are life-changing. But in the conversation I have with Gary in this interview, he goes way more into detail. He has so much, let's say, brain candy, and he drops so many knowledge bombs. You are going to just love this. So without further ado, let's get into the episode. Learn from Gary, enjoy, and please, all shares are appreciated. And the best way to support this show, this podcast, is share and then also hit the subscribe button or the follow button wherever you're watching or listening. We appreciate your support greatly. Here we go. Gary Rhodes, how you doing, man? It's good to see you.
so good to finally be on a call with you.
Yeah, we've been I've been following you for quite a while. We've been communicating some, and now you're here in the USA, and we're talking, and I'm so glad because, man, I got to tell you, I love the work you're doing, and I love the education you're putting out there too.
Thank you. Yeah, no, likewise. You and I both, it's great to bring information that's not known mainstream to people that want to really truly succeed in the health and well-being.
It's just so important, so relevant. You know, you have these Instagram posts that I just love because I don't know if you're doing it yourself or if somebody does any editing for you, but whoever's doing it captures the best camera angles, the best verbiage, and the best info. And in these short little posts, I mean, I know a lot, but I don't know everything, of course. None of us do, but I learn so much watching you. So I don't know how you do it, but I hope just keep doing your good work because you're like an encyclopedia of information, and I'm just here to pick your brain, brother.
Well, whatever I've got, you can pick away. I don't know if there's
Okay.
much of it, but it's all yours, whatever's there.
Well, let's start with a conversation I love to have, especially with you. I think this is going to be probably the most interesting I've ever had for this topic. And it's kind of like this topic that goes hand in hand. There are two things together. Actually, it's a multitude of things together. So let me kind of introduce my thoughts, and then I'd love to hear your thoughts about this. So I'm in my clinic here in a medical facility. We work with a lot of people who are, let's say, 70 plus years old. Many of them have movement disorders, Alzheimer's, dementia, but most of them, not all of them, most of them, and even some of the younger ones definitely have insufficient muscle mass for their age and for what they want to accomplish in their daily activities, daily living. And we also know that the bone density issues are becoming more and more and more prevalent. We have a lot of baby boomers out here, right? I'm 62, so I'm a tail end boomer. And what we see a lot of osteoporosis coming in, lack of muscle mass, lots of osteopenia. It could be from lack of muscle mass that they have. It could be they had chemotherapy or some kind of lifestyle or medications that just messed up bone density. But I am so grateful that we have this biodensity machine, and you have been doing this way longer than I have. I've had it 6 months, like this week.
Oh,
You've
really?
been doing this for what, 10 years or something?
2012.
Well, there you go. More than 10 years. What are you seeing out there in your experience with this type of resistance training regarding benefits in all the areas that I just uh, divulged, if you will? Bone density, balance, movement, muscle mass. Tell me what you're experiencing over the past 12 years.
Well, so many things in 12 years, but just what comes to mind for me is
And,
just
and, and I'm interjecting, I'm sorry, and why is it so important to be doing these isometric max force loading, osteogenic force loading contractions on a machine like this, a biodensity machine? What are you seeing and why is it so important?
well, firstly, it's super safe. For me, what got me into this was my grandmother. So to be able to help my grandmother
Ah, yeah,
was my driving force behind it to
yeah.
really see how I can help strengthen my grandmother's bone density because, of course, she had osteoporosis. So that was my, real sort of focus on how I can help my grandmother because, one thing that meant most to me and still does was my grandmother. She brought me up. She was very glamorous, immaculate
Ah,
hair, her nails were immaculate. And I saw this beautiful lady just withering away, physically and mentally. She was such the life and soul of the party. And when her physical body started to decline, her posture got bad, her balance got bad, her grip strength, she started to go in and suddenly not become the life of the party. So, when I bought this device in 2012, it was really only a hope theoretically that what John Jaquish, the inventor, was saying
yeah,
theoretically was possible to help somebody like my grandmother who's senior deconditioned minus 2.7, so just gone into osteoporosis, was a potential hope that I could maybe, help her become stronger. But my main focus here wasn't really osteoporosis. It was really balance because, as you well know, Carl, it takes quite a while for somebody to regain bone mass over time, even with biodensity.
sure.
And biodensity is not the only thing. We have to look at lifestyle management, nutrition, vitamin D, calcium, magnesium. There's a whole host of things. So really, biodensity was the stimulus that enabled my grandmother to get access
Hmm.
to unleashing her power in a safe, controlled way. And that's really what biodensity does. But we saw very quickly with the PowerPlate was how do we help my grandmother have better stability? Because it was about confidence, and we sometimes don't often link the two together. My grandmother's confidence was that if she gets up and starts to walk around, she may fall and break a hip. And she knew more than anybody that if somebody falls and breaks the hip, they're likely to
Yeah,
die. And a friend of hers actually did. And
yeah,
within 12 months, the stats are alarming. If somebody breaks a hip bone over 65, 15 to 30% chance of dying within 12 months. Now, that jumps out at somebody, especially if you're 79 with osteoporosis. You
Yeah.
can see why psychologically you might want to just stay in the chair, which is the exact opposite of what you need to do. So when I bought the first device, I said to my grandma, look, I'm not sure if this is going to work, but I'm hopeful. And actually, my aim here is to not hopefully break any of your bones. It's to help you get stronger, better balance, better strength. And hopefully, if we can reverse your osteoporosis, then that'll be a huge tick. And very quickly, week by week, I was able to see a radical change, in my grandmother's balance. We had her standing on one leg, which she couldn't even stand really much on two legs, but to stand on one leg for over 10 seconds within 5 sessions of PowerPlate. And we're talking like 120 seconds. That's all we're talking on PowerPlate. For that instability to wire and fire those neural pathways. She felt it as well. It wasn't me telling her. She'd stood on one leg, got on the PowerPlate, got back on the floor, and she could feel it. And for the first time, I saw it give her hope that actually she could feel the difference. She could feel the connection to the ground. And then she got more confident. And then week by week, she started to use bioDensity. And she started to see the biofeedback, the strength gains. So you can imagine what this does for somebody who's 79 or anybody. But somebody who's 79 that starts to see progression and strength, physiologically feel it, but also see it as well with their eyes.
Yeah.
Over 23 months, we took her from minus 2.7 back into the normal ranges of a 30-year-old. And it wasn't just like that. We saw independence. She started to get out of the chair by herself. She started to make cups of tea by herself, which may not sound like a huge thing for most people.
No, this
but
is
let me tell you,
huge.
I was almost in tears because I remember sat down and she got up out of the chair and she said, do you want a cup of tea? And I'm like, and I must have paused for like 10 seconds. And she said, are you okay? I said, I'm fine. She said, what's up? I said, and I just run by thinking it was me that was asking her for a cup and then helping her out the chair. Suddenly she's up and she's forgotten that she's not able. She just got up. She's confident. She's independent. She started to go back to the Wellbeing Cafe. She started to go back to bingo. She started to connect with her friends. So this is not just a physiological increase. This is a life-changing quality of life, which for me, I thought to myself, I have to really look at now how I can dedicate the rest of my life towards bringing this to the world. And of course, when you get in the world of business, it's how do we take these complex issues, simplify them, and then get into as many people as we can. And how do we democratize it so it's affordable? At the time I was in a good position financially and I was able to buy the machine and really help my grandmother, but not everybody has access to that. So then it's the case of how do we bring it into centers, collaborate with people like yourself that are truly wanting to impact the world and bring products and services and education to people where they can now get access to this and hopefully change their life. So balance, strength and bone density is what we're seeing consistently, whether it's rehabilitation, senior people. The question is when people say, well, who is biodensity for? Without giving a general answer, it's for anybody that's got bones. If you're a jellyfish, don't bother coming.
I love it because that's similar to what we see here. Anyone with a skeleton, except for this guy over here, because he's no longer with us. But anyways,
Still got a skeleton. It must have been used by density.
Yeah. But anyways, so you mentioned so many things that are so highly relevant that I don't want to let these just pass over people's heads. Okay, in case no offense to anybody listening. Let's go back to neural pathways. Let's talk about 120 seconds on a PowerPlate. Let's talk about maybe barefoot on the PowerPlate so that your plantar skin, the most data says it's the most highly densely populated with small nerve endings like mechanoreceptors, sensory receptors. And I worked for a podiatrist, Dr. Emily Splickel, for years out of New York City, teaching for her around, mostly England and North America for barefoot training specialist courses. But I learned so much for her. And one of the things is by the time we're 40 years old, on average, about half of those nerve endings at the bottom of the feet have gone dormant. They're not dead. They're just sleeping because we've been wearing socks and shoes for decades. And for a lot of people, that's like all day, every day, except for in bed at night. And some people are told by a podiatrist, don't go barefoot. It's bad for you. Why? I don't know. I have no idea. I don't know unless they have an open sore or something. Of course, that wouldn't be good. But just that alone, when you take barefoot movement in a safe environment surface stimulate those nerve endings. They're directly connected to the brain through the peripheral and central nervous systems. We are immediately firing up and receiving, we're firing up these nerves, waking them up, and then we get instant information to the brain for better proprioceptive awareness and a stronger signal back out to help us stabilize. Now, step up on our PowerPlate and vibrate those same nerves. Right there, I just want everybody to know what you said about that. That is potentially completely game-changing just in that, let's say, category of awareness, which usually causes more stability and improved movement. And it can happen almost in an instant. It's crazy, but it's so cool.
Massive. Stability firing with a PowerPlate. I mean, I believe that PowerPlate and bioDensity, but particularly PowerPlate, because it is a global brand, is probably the most underknown, most powerfulest modality to physical strength. I mean, when you talk about fitness, we talk about exercise bikes and dumbbells and cardiovascular equipment, and PowerPlate for a lot of years have fit in that category. But for me, the positioning of this is really about what health conditions can it help. You know, people that are deconditioned from, you know, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, peripheral neuropathy, the list goes on.
Oh, sure.
That we have seen people use PowerPlate because it's what they can get access to. Some people can't do a lot of things, but because PowerPlate is subconscious, it's, you know, you don't have to get on there and start working out any Einstein mathematics. You get on there and the whole body harmonic vibration takes over and starts to truly help the nervous system regulate in a way that most people, they don't really need to understand. Actually, I said to my grandmother, just get on it and reap the benefits.
Excuse me. Oh, I love that you said that harmonic vibration too, because the nervous system can tend to become somewhat deregulated or a lot deregulated. And then, so if you take this waking up of those nerves and you get a better input, and then you're walking more safely and you feel more secure, then now you have a decreased fear of falling. Now, maybe it's not after the first session, but there's a really good chance that very quickly, because I've seen it happen in my travels all over the world. If there's a PowerPlate, we use it. And of course, I'm lucky. I have the top end model here. It's the cream of the crop that they make, and I love this machine. Everybody loves it. It's the number one go-to device in our clinic, followed by bioDensity. They might be tied for first place, but irregardless, the idea is that if you create hope, an ounce of hope can create a world of change. And what we see, and I wrote about it, actually wrote a chapter in my second book about PowerPlate. That's before I had bioDensity. So Lee was very happy. Sent him a bunch of copies. But anyways, the bottom line is next book's going to have bioDensity in it because I want people to know about that. But the first chapter in the book is about hope, belief, and empowerment. So when you regain an ability like your grandmother did, that can open up worlds of opportunity, which can lead people, if they're depressed, out of depression. If they feel unsafe, they feel safer. I mean, think of that. Possibility is huge for so many people.
Oh, it really is, and to witness that as well. You know, we all don't realize we're all getting older. And I love what you say there about hope. When people think something's possible, it's amazing what switches in the brain. Because if they truly believe that the best years are behind them, which my grandmother did, and not that I'm a health psychologist, but I also understand that the most important thing is how we feel in any given moment. So for me, with my grandmother, was not to try and just come across like the grandson that's trying to help her out and she's a bit concerned I'm going to break her along the process. I had to really articulate in a way that it wasn't me telling her or selling her that this is a solution. It was for me to really get to understand the meaning of this for her and what would it mean if the best years was still ahead of you, and what happens if you could still go to bingo. And I created a vision and a picture of all of the good times. I mean, like a lot of, should we say, more senior people, they can be a little bit of a nightmare to get with it immediately on my experiences because they haven't seen people for a few days or a few hours, and then suddenly they want to just sort of vomit all of their negative emotions that they've had. But then when you get with them, they start to speak really openly and all of the great things that they did, and they become sort of alive again. So creating that vision of a future and how we get you there and that hope is what really accelerated my grandmother to lean into this, hopefully knowing that this could be a better way forward.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I've seen people go from, come in feeling completely defeated and hopeless
Yeah.
to unstoppable and optimistic. And it's like a spiral upward. Instead of a spiral downward, you reverse it now. And they launch into this next dimension of movement, confidence, like you said earlier. And we love, and I also say, like, what we see is important. We love to witness it, but how they feel is the most important thing. Are you feeling it? Oh, if you're feeling it, man, I'm really happy now,
Absolutely.
Yeah, peripheral neuropathy, we've had people come in for that countless times, and it's amazing what that can do, the PowerPlate can do to help diminish that, even in one session, a few minutes, or maybe have it go away, because we've had that too, or rheumatoid arthritis in the feet, we've had it just go away. They might have to come in for a tune-up now and then, but getting that circulation going, bringing blood and oxygen and maybe lymphatic fluid, get that going if there's blockages, and watch the inflammation decrease, pain decrease, movement increase.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. I love it.
We also recently have recognised, for the last 2 years, certainly I've been working what I believe is the really most important thing, even above the physical, is the emotional well-being, the emotional component here. And if we neglect the emotional well-being or the back catalogue of trauma that we've not yet dealt with, then we know there's a direct correlation with every single emotion to a physical manifestation. So when we talk about the connection between bone health, we connect that to a support. If you felt that you've not been supported emotionally, there is an emotional charge to this. So we're putting a program together so if somebody's got osteopenia and they've done everything right, they've trained, they've got good nutrition, they haven't got a predisposition genetically, whatever it is, but you would almost see this person as a picture of like, wow, if they've got osteopenia, osteoporosis, then we must all be getting it, because we have a number of people, one individually in the UK that I don't think she'll mind me mentioning her name, Anthea Turner. She's 63. She's incredibly, she looks amazing. She looks like, you wouldn't believe she was 63. She almost looks like she's 43. And her posture's great. So when she had a DEXA scan, she was alarmingly surprised and actually quite, not angry, but disappointed to think that she's done everything right in nutrition and yet she's still got osteopenia. So who knows what that is? So if we can look at the tail ends of the bell curve and see why these people still having low bone mineral density, then we have to consider lots of other things that we may not be looking at mainstream. And I think we have to look at the well-being of an individual. Are they stressed? Are they getting sleep? We're just a set of emotions. And if we don't link that to the physical, then I think we're missing out on key things here to really help people, improve much quicker.
Oh, absolutely, 100%. You address this so well. I'm not going to say anything more. What you just said is perfect. All I'll say is that this is so important because it all goes together. Our emotions and how we feel. And sometimes I think they perpetuate each other in each direction, either going up or down.
It's the sphere. We have to tackle this head on. And how do we melt the glue that binds all the negative emotions? Because we kind of terrorist in his own organization. And let me explain what I mean by that. With my grandmother, I could see that she was selecting from certain emotions that would derail her to be the strongest version of herself.
Yeah.
So, when I sat with my grandmother for many hours over many days, weeks, months, and years, I really understood the trauma that she'd gone through. And I didn't do this with a focus that I'm a health psychologist. It was just really more of a human being connecting with my grandmother and being really sympathetic, understanding, and realizing that some of the things that she's done in her life, I know that's probably not the best version of her. But when you start to understand the history and the trauma that I knew she went through, you can almost see how she's got to where she is. And I think if we address that, we're almost removing the thorn that's attached to the nervous system. And when you remove that, it's amazing what just opens up with people and how they then see a clear success path to what they now need to do.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. It's, well, I find it to be absolutely fascinating how much a single ounce of hope, how far it can go. We've had, I have a story, and this is not related to biodensity or anything like that, but in Mexico, there was a situation, just to illustrate for those who are watching or listening, the power of hope. A lady came in, I was the keynote speaker, and I'm all dressed up in a suit and everything, and then we had a 45-minute workout planned afterwards. So I was the last person of the afternoon. I had no idea what to do. I don't know what I'm going to do. What do they want to do? Let's find out what the problems are. So I didn't speak Spanish too well at the time. Now I do. I had a translator. So what's your first problem of the day for you? How about, does anyone have trouble getting out of bed when they wake up? Oh my gosh, hands went up. And I said, I couldn't believe it. I said, geez, why don't we get on the floor and we'll do a workout called The Floor is Our Friend? Because the floor needs to be your friend if you wind up on the floor. You need to learn how to navigate the floor. So what's the first thing you do on the floor? Roll over, front to back to front, both directions, and we kind of have a strategy for that. So long story real short, there's a lady up in the front in the corner. There's about 50 people on the floor with Parkinson's. And there are, people around helping them. She's crying. Well, I didn't find out right then. I found out later. And she was only, at the time, I think 42 years old. She'd had Parkinson's for about 15 years, very young onset. And it was the first time she'd rolled over without assistance in 5 years. So this lady was arms crossed, standoffish when I was watching her from the stage and speaking. It's like, oh, what's this, this gringo going to help me with? Well, what happened was she became, that one simple move changed everything. And I saw her when I was down in Mexico in Monterrey this past September. She's unstoppable. And she credits me for this. All I did is show her how to roll over. She did the work, but now she's unstoppable because hope created possibility, and then it just led to other things. And I mean, this is the power, potentially, of hope. So tell me, in your experience, let's go biodensity now. In your experience, and we have the machine here too. We've had it for 6 months. So I expect in the next few months, at some point, people are going to come through with a new DEXA scan that probably reveals something. Maybe it's no more progression in the osteoporosis or in the scores, like no more diminished or worse scores. And in some cases, that could be actually an improvement because without it, they may have progressed. Or some start to come in with improved scores. I know it takes time. What's it like for the people when they come in and and there's a lot to talk about before that too, like the amount of muscle mass you can pack on with this machine, because I've been doing it. And my level of strength, I'm stronger than I've ever been. But what are you experiencing with people psychologically and physically over time with the biodensity and the whole technique involved in that?
Yeah, I mean, depending on who it is, obviously it's different sort of
Sure.
expectations. So for somebody who, should we say, is senior and deconditioned, what they love to see is biofeedback. Just for the first time to see that they're pushing on something, whether it's improving or not, that they can see that, movement.
Oh, right, because we got the dial. We can see how much we're pushing. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a weighing scale, but you're getting to push and pull with your arms and legs, and you get to see, a needle move. So fundamentally, whether it's improving or not, you're seeing activity move physically, which is great. But people, every single person, and this is bar none, every single person, whether a world-class athlete that we work with or whether it's somebody super senior and deconditioned at 90 plus, they physiologically feel the difference. So people might forget what you and I say on this interview, but people will never forget the way something we may say how make them feel, because it lights something up within inside them. So from a physical perspective, their expectations have got to be met, and I think we have a responsibility to not mislead somebody to believing that this is the solution to everything.
Exactly.
We can't guarantee anything.
We can't guarantee that.
What we can say is that we understand certain science as best we know it right now. And I think the biggest link that most people are not really connecting is the stimulus that's needed. So if a doctor has a DEXA scan and see somebody's got osteoporosis, there's certain pathways that look at the vitamin D3, hopefully look at the nutrition, and then maybe put them on bisphosphonate or Fosamax or some type of an anabolic drug that will help stabilize the bone mineral density. But we have to remember here that if we're going to give the calcium to a patient or some drugs, that we have to look at what are they doing physically. Are they doing any type of resistance training? And then if they are, is it safe for them to do it? And what we find a lot of the time is that something what people can do versus what they will do is very different. So with biodensity, people can get access for the first time and get all the benefits of a gymnast without the risk of any injury. And when you look at Wolff's Law, and that's over 100 years worth of research, that if we can compress bone in an axial format, meaning bone to bone, and compress it, we know this stimulates, compresses bone and helps to recalcify and pull minerals in. So therefore, if somebody's low in calcium, magnesium and other things, then we need the body to adapt and stimulate and recalcify. We don't just want to give somebody protein to go and building muscle without going to the gym. And it's the same with bones. So the expectation from a physical point of view is that we can provide a safe environment with education, awareness, support, where they can come one time per week for less than 15 minutes and get access to, I would say, strengthening the nervous system. I mean, physiologically, we're pushing with his arms and legs, but we're accessing and being able to unleash the power of his nervous system in a safe, controlled way. And most people don't do that. I heard a friend of mine, Gary Brecker, say recently that people over age 30 or 35 will never, ever sprint again as fast as they can. They don't utilize the capabilities. And then what you don't use, you lose. So we need to be able to really push as hard as we can in different areas. The body's very smart. The brain is designed to survive, not thrive. So if we're not using it, it'll stop, it'll atrophy and die. So from the expectations of people, that we need to make sure that they understand what they're doing, why they're doing it, and it's just phenomenal to see the results that we're getting, because there's very few people that we've come across that have not got significant gains in balance, strength, and so many people that even if they're not increasing, somebody that's 52 years old or 45-year-old menopausal woman that's come in with, let's say, osteopenia, 2 years later, they're still the same. So you imagine a 45-year-old woman that 2 years later, she's still 45 years old. She'd be happy. She's not aged.
Sure.
But we have to remember that sometimes increasing or maintaining is brilliant. And even if somebody does slow down and go down a little bit, we've probably slowed down that degradation, which is massive as well.
Exactly. I'm so glad you said that. I mean, that's what we say here, because we know that it's true, and it's on a case-by-case basis. Everyone's different. So can we go back? I'm just curious. Tell me more about the nervous system and unlocking the nervous system. How are we doing that?
Well, when you think about the nervous system, well, first of all, I think everything's related to the deregulation of the nervous system, emotional well-being, physical, trapped trauma. The biggest connection we have, obviously, is, well, it's with a lot of things. It's with the ground. I love what you said before about the ground. The biggest connection is to the earth. When was the last time somebody was barefoot on the earth connecting, charging the cells? But in terms of regulating the nervous system, a lot of people don't really engage the nervous system. That they only play around with it, in a few small physical modalities. So for me, if we can regulate the nervous system with apparatus like, everything connects with the nervous system, but what truly lights up the nervous system in a way that activates the nervous system and gets you back in touch viscerally with your whole body. And PowerPlate, there's a great podcast, by the way, that I did want to mention on here that a lot of people probably not listen to, but it's a podcast with Tony Molina and Dave Asprey. You may have listened to it.
Is Tony Los Angeles based or West Coast?
He runs the longevity clinic. Tony Molina. He's one of the most knowledgeable, educated guys on planet. You should probably get on an interview.
Well, yes, and let me just say, I met him at the URSA conference in San Diego. Lee Hillman introduced me, and Tony blew my mind. I actually had to leave. When I left there, I couldn't talk to anybody for a while because I couldn't believe what he told me. And so I've been wanting to reconnect with Tony. Thank you for mentioning that. Okay, thank you.
connect you
Yeah, I do
because
want to have him as a guest at some point, and I want him to be my therapist too.
he's got
He did
such
some visual
incredible.
stuff with me that
Yeah,
reset everything in about 2 minutes.
yeah. I've had the privilege of working with him, and I've just spent 2 days with him recently in Santa Monica at his,
Oh man, that's so cool.
and we got to spend. In fact, the next day, I just said, "Look, I'd love to come and spend a couple more hours with you." And we sat down, and not that it felt like a therapy session, but he's got such a good energy and such a good way to articulate and communicate what's really meaningful,
Yeah,
and taking all the complexity away and just getting down to raw conversation around how can we be the strongest version of ourselves physically, mentally, emotionally, and without all of this, because we're all searching for something, we're
yeah.
all in external, when actually everything that we need is within us right now. And all we're
Wow.
trying to do fundamentally is strengthen the physical body, not to be a super athlete, although that might be some people's dreams. But, for me, I want every single person to have access to independence. So when they get to 60, 70, 80, 90, they can travel Europe with a luggage and put it on the top shelf. And
Absolutely. Yeah.
the quality of the life is what means. We talk about longevity, which
Yeah.
is great. We all want to live to 100, but nobody wants to live to 100 when they died 20 years before and they're dragging the dead ass body around. So how do we physiologically strengthen the body, which then affects the mind? The mind affects
Yeah.
the body. It's connected. It's as one. So we can, be a higher vibration and spend time with his grandkids, spend time with his
Yeah.
partners if we're lucky enough to have as partners when we get to retire. It saddens me that we get to a certain age and we almost give up on ourselves when we have access to information. And I think it has to come from a place of wanting to live longer, because nobody wants to. When they get to 70, 80, I've interviewed lots of senior people,
Uh-huh.
and they kind of just accept that the 70, this is how it is. We're old, we're in pain, and it doesn't have to be this way. So we've got a real responsibility to really help the more senior deconditioned, the global population, the corporate well-being space, 40s,
Yeah.
50s, but
Sure.
also prevention and education to the younger generation. Now that I see a lot of people being more atrophy and sat down, and biodensity, for the short time that you use it, it's just ridiculous how much benefit you can get in such a short time, increasing the myofibril, ligaments, connective tissue, supporting the joints, physically the structure. And remember, if your shoulders are back, one thing I noticed with my grandmother when she was kyphosis, she was leaning over. She's
Yeah.
leaning over her lungs. So when her shoulders are back, her lungs are more expanded. Oxygen's now breathing more. Now she's not
Absolutely.
looking down, she's looking straight forward, which is a better day in the office because you're looking where you're going. So, life becomes more exciting.
Well, so let's go back for a minute. So we'll go back in order, sort of like, so yes, the whole thing about shoulders back, look forward, taking a deeper breath, getting more oxygen through the body, to the cells, to the brain, blood and oxygen to the brain. Cognition improves, organs function better. So that's a no-brainer. Then we have the, I don't want to lose my train of thought, but I sort of did. But I know
Nervous.
I want to go right down the road of this connective tissue
Yeah.
and talk about how, well, sadly, first of all, it's sad to me that I know a few 65, 70-year-olds who expect to not be able to move well in 5, 10, 15 years. This is what they expect. This is something I'd love to help them change their thinking about, and we work on that because it shouldn't be like that. I mean, nobody wants to live long and then die slow and take, and God rest his soul, my dad, who was bedridden for 6 years, the last 6 years of his life. And it was an unfortunate thing that happened, and it wasn't his fault. But had he taken care of himself, probably would have been different. We can't go back and find out. But bottom line is, if you have a lifespan of 84 years like he did, but you only have a health span of 75 years or so, that's no bueno. It's just, I want to live long and healthy and die quick. I think most people would probably want to do that. So with that in mind, and this whole mindset of, I love how you talk about we have a responsibility with people so that they can maybe wrap their head around the idea, their mind around the idea that they can expect that maybe their best years are ahead. That's huge.
It,
Enormous. Plus, I
it,
want to go right into this connective tissue thing in a minute, but that's enormous. And all this goes together. You're doing biodensity, you're doing these isometric max force loading. I mean, all this stuff goes together.
For sure. Absolutely.
So let's talk about that for a minute. We have an aging population. We have a lot of baby boomers out there. There are a lot of sarcopenia, osteoporosis, osteopenia. We know here, after only 6 months, people are getting stronger. The research that I have on this type of max force loading also shows that it trains, very effectively trains type 2 muscle fibers more than other modalities of resistance training. And we can think about those in terms of sprinting, box jumps, jump roping, and 100-yard dash, or we can also think in terms of balance because they're so associated with balance. So if we lose our type 2 fibers, which they tend to be the first ones to go as we age, well, by nature of that, then our balance is probably compromised. So we need to maintain this. In addition to, let's say, building muscle mass, building strength, coming from you, it just makes more sense than me because you have more experience and you're smarter than I am. Is oh, you are for sure, Gary. What else is going on with biodensity? What else is going on with this machine? Why is it so important besides muscle mass and bone density?
Well, you just think about life. This is the only body that I've got. I don't have one in the wardrobe when I'm 70 years old to just replace.
I love that. That's good.
So when I say to, and I've been privileged to be in some really, when I say rooms that with smart people, and I'm talking about some of the world's best academics, scientists, orthopedic surgeons. I got to work with Tony Robbins closely and travel and and get proximity to people that truly, truly care, but also have access to people that have the expertise. And it's amazing to see. And this is not to blame, shame, or judge anybody. And I was very lucky to speak at the World Economic Forum last year. And I'm in a room with some of the most powerfulest people on planet Earth. There was Tony Blair, there was Zelensky, there was the CEO of Forbes magazine, there was the London Mayor, there was family offices, there was the world's best architect, there was under Forbes 30 billionaires. So this is a room of what I would say is very smart people. I'm not sure everybody in that room was happy, but anyone, if you're watching this, then I'm sure you are deep down. But we forget to enjoy life. And what I basically said there is that we're the architects of our own building. But not one person in this room knows how strong the foundation is. And the reason I say that is because for how smart we are, how rich we are, how powerful we are, if we're walking around in this physical body, which is the most sophisticated technology on the planet, and we don't know the strength and the foundation, then we have a problem because we take it for granted. And if we get our blood sorted out as biomechanics, as bones, as liver, we get the good cognitive function. We've got all that good stuff and we're heading in a direction and off the cliff. So it has to get people's attention to say we need to physiologically strengthen the human body. The whole musculoskeletal system needs to be intact. And we know the number in the bank account. We know if the car needs an MOT. And I speak to a lot of professors who are spent their life around bone health. And I ask them, again, without blaming them, but just say, do you know your T-score? And not one of them knows what their T-score is. And the reason I ask them that is because if they don't know, what chance does the rest of the world have of knowing?
It's very true.
So for me, what bioDensity does and PowerPlate, it gives you access to everything that you need to live a longer life. And again, all of the people that we spend the time around, they're not talking about bone health. They're not talking about skeletal health. We talk about obesity. We talk about type 2 diabetes, but we don't talk about skeletal health. And when you look at type 2 diabetes and you look at the receptors that pull in, it's as muscle, as the quality of our muscle is degrading. And we talk about sarcopenia. In England, it's a $2.5 billion pound problem. And what's connected to the bones is the muscle, so we can never be as strong as without our skeletal system. So when you think about bodybuilders, I don't want to make this also about senior and deconditioned. I really want people to know that if you're a young athlete or your 30s or 40s and you're a young father or parent, you want to be the strongest version of yourself. But remember, if you're going to the gym and you're going on a cross trainer and a bike and doing all the great CrossFit, you can never be as strong as the foundation. So I would encourage everybody to look at the bone health. And this is one of the things that we're doing in the UK. We're going to rapidly deploy a screening service to scan people's bones with a device called EchoLight. It's 10% more accurate than the DEXA scan. There's no radiation. And again, this comes back to the awareness and education. If we can make people realize that bone health needs focus and attention, then everything then is possible, because once we die, as mind goes with it, and who knows which realm we go into then.
True. Very true. So that's really interesting. A couple of places recently I've read something, so I didn't make this up, folks, that your muscle mass is directly related to your longevity and quality of life. I mean, a lot of things are
muscle.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of things are, your grip strength, longevity, quality of life, your calf muscles in your calves, muscle mass in the legs, muscle mass in the body, how much you move, and longevity. But the thing is where I've been putting my time recently, really getting into the deep state thinking about this and research, is that when we build muscle mass in our younger years, it's like a retirement plan of muscle for our elderly years, because we can draw upon the muscle that we built younger and maintain, I might add. You need to maintain it. You can't just build it and then stop. You build and maintain. This is going to help so much for longevity, quality of life, more than anything.
Absolutely.
And with bone density, of course, all the other things that tie in it, like what's our metabolic rate? How much muscle do you have? Well, that can be a determining factor. What's your bone health? How much muscle do you have? How well do you move? How much muscle do you have? Because that's the foundation for everything that we do. Yeah, a lot of other things too. Somebody kind of arguing with me the other day when I was teaching, and he meant well. Well, our vision's more important for movement than anything else. I know blind people who are strong and they walk. So, sorry. I don't want to make them look bad, but the thing is you can be blind, but if you don't have muscle, you're going to have a problem. If you're blind or you're not blind and you don't have muscle, you have a problem. If you have muscle, it's going to be better. Period. Balance, movement, agility, mobility, stability, all of it.
Yeah, we do calibrate with the eyes, but I love what you said. That's a great example of somebody who can't see that, is very strong. Deaf people have a different, ability as well in terms
Sure.
of
Yeah.
They can't hear, but they can hear better than most people that can hear.
Sure. And Tony, who you mentioned, he actually, we had a conversation about vision. I can't remember much because the words were too big. I mean, I need to pick this guy's brain, man. He's a genius. But vision's a very, very important sensory, probably the number one sensory input, right? But if you don't have it, doesn't mean you can't walk. You got to have muscle to do that. The other thing too, I noticed, I'm curious about is, do you mind just if you have another 5 minutes or so?
I've got as long as you permit.
Okay. Well, I could go for hours. What's happening when people are doing biodensity, in particular biodensity, and this type of isometric contraction, this training? What's happening when we see somebody doing this and their A1C scores are improving? You're going to explain it better than I can, but I'd love to hear how you describe this, like the diabetes, type 2 diabetes, and reversing it, basically.
Yeah, I mean,
not that we could guarantee it. We can't guarantee it, but we do see it happening. A1Cs, the 3-month average of blood sugar, improving.
Yeah. You see, it's interesting you say that, because that wasn't our focus. I don't know this, but the research that was done in the UK, I gifted that machine to the NHS Stratford, because when I was looking to help my grandmother, it was purely just about helping her become stronger and not falling, and hopefully reversing osteoporosis, which we ticked all those boxes. But when I give the device to a guy called Basil Hunt in Stratford Surgery, he's a health psychologist, incredible guy, and he also wanted to put a few other things along the research there, looking at the psychology. Why not measure people's A1C glucose levels, look at independence. So there's a few other things that went on, but what came out of that small research, and there's been other research since, is that we was able to reduce the A1C glucose levels, And if you think about it, this is why sarcopenia is interesting, because we'll look at where the receptors are in the muscle that pull in the glycogen. If we're depleted like a reservoir and we're low on muscle mass or quality of muscle, then you can imagine how we're just not metabolically able to, do what we need to do as a functioning human being in the world
Sure.
of converting. So many people are overeating, and I think what we have to recognize as well is that when people change one area of their life, it's amazing what we saw. We had very deconditioned individuals on that research, and with walking sticks, type 2 diabetics, chronic fatigue, inflammation, knee joints, ankle, all sorts of psychological debilitating areas. And what we saw is that people that showed up one time per week not only got physically stronger, but they pulled bloods and looked at different markers, the red blood cells, the white blood cells, their immune system. They tended to optimize a better diet, so the choices was better as well. So you can't put it all down to biodensity, because there's been changes within.
Okay.
You get a bit of a shift in something, or you spend time around a health guru for a month, just naturally the environment becomes stronger than your own willpower. So then you start to be kind to the body. You're not feeding yourself with loads of sugar. But yeah, interesting how biodensity can help to really, help people with type 2 diabetes.
Well, that is interesting, because that's been, going way back, even for myself, because I used to be I was quite obese, very obese, morbidly, and 15 years ago. But the whole psychological aspect of making a change didn't involve just going to my trainer and working with my trainer. It involved lifestyle changes, dietary and everything else. So sleeping better, sleep patterns or habits, and so that makes sense. So we can't necessarily.
Sorry, for those that are watching as well, I don't want them to think that biodensity is a one thing at all, because we can take anybody with type 2 diabetes, and within 30 days, we transform what they're putting in the mouth. Pretty much is a done deal. We can get you back in ranges and functioning metabolically like you've never functioned before. We are what we eat, and we are what we think. We consume too much sugar, too much processed foods, and when we change that, we now give the body a better chance to truly start to repair.
Absolutely. We didn't talk about the next thing that I'll just mention this briefly. We don't have to go into detail unless you want to, because I don't know that much yet. But Tony at the conference put me on this bike, and it vibrates, and I was on it for 20 seconds. I thought I was going to die. And he said, "You just went through all your glycogen." I said, "You've got to be kidding me." You know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah, it's phenomenal.
Oh man, I'm going to get one of those here. In fact, I'm going to talk with Joe Kohler about it later today. But yeah, we're getting one here, because that thing is really something. And there's another thing to add to our arsenal, right?
Yeah,
holy cow!
Again, you're getting all the benefits of the vibration technology in the pedals on a bike. So when you think about you're increasing your VO2 max, I mean, when you look at the markers you really want to measure, like HRV, your sleep, your VO2 max, there's certain things that we, like a pilot in a cockpit, there's so many flashing lights and data that we can get. But what does the pilot really need to look at? He needs to look at the altitude, the fuel, there's things that he can't take his eye off. And I think as human beings, we have to look at, where do we need to keep his eye on things that really give us that health, quality and longevity? And this bike, PowerPlate, biodensity, ice bath, sauna, these 5 things I would say is a really good longevity protocol, along with the nutrition and lifestyle. And I would encourage you to get one. I actually recently went on one and did the workout. You're basically getting a 35-40 minute cardiovascular workout in 8 minutes.
Yeah, we're doing it here. We're getting one, so I can't wait. Well, Gary, man, first of all, I can't thank you enough for joining me. This has been a long time in the works to get us to connect like this.
Yes.
And this is a spur of the moment. We decided last night, let's jump on this today. So, thank you very, very much. Thank you so much, because I knew it would be great, but it's just off the charts, man, talking with you.
I appreciate it, and I really appreciate what you're doing, Carl. I see what you're doing, and I love what your facility holds, because you're not just looking at this linear with one piece of technology. You're looking at pulling in different modalities that truly impact the clients that walk in your door, whether they've got Alzheimer's, dementia, any physical disability that they have, you're meeting them where they are, and then you're elevating them, bringing them up. And I think the future really is about awareness, education, and truly collaboration. I'm sure we'll go on and do things collectively together, but my mission really here is to bring as much information to people as we can, because when they understand more and educated, they can ask better questions, and then from that place they can lean into it, and hopefully we can be that resource for people.
So relevant too about that too, being able to ask better questions. And I've always been of the mindset that education's meant to be shared and not withheld or hoarded. And so, what you're doing with that is amazing. And thank you for your kind words. We are trying here. There are a lot of times I know we do good. I know we do good things. I know we can help make a difference, but there's so much more to do, and I just need to learn so much more. So that's my mission: is to learn more,
stop learning,
help
buddy.
more.
The more I think I know, the less I realize I do know. We only know a small piece of it.
Oh my gosh, it's like crazy. It's just crazy how that is.
Yeah.
I'm writing a third book now. I'm like, oh, well, yeah, it's going to be good, but for crying out loud, I mean, should I even do it, or should I wait until I know more? But I'll never feel like I know enough, so I'll just do it, Then I'll write another book. I don't know. But I love the learning process, too, especially for people like you who just know so much, and you're so good and willing to share it, so thank you very much.
Pleasure. And listen, just to finish off, I would say that the bioDensity and the PowerPlate are great, but you can have the best things in the world, but if people don't know the benefits, then there's a rush to it. It's just that they don't go towards it. So one of the things that we're really focusing on, certainly this year, next year, 2024, is providing a full educational system around the bioDensity and the PowerPlate, internal and external, for the people around the world, and then focusing on how we can rapidly deploy a screening service that's affordable in the UK particularly. I know the government's looking to try and open more fracture liaison services, because we kind of wait until people get to over 65 and then reactive, where what we need to do, and all really I am, is just somebody who's trying to connect the disconnects and hopefully influence some influencers to put a torch on what matters. And if we can go out there and start screening the high street in corporate workplaces, then we have a better chance to educate. And the two biggest reasons why people are not in the workplace in the UK, the government's just announced, is number one is mental health, and number two is MSK, so physical deconditioning. So you're either unable to go to work because you're physically unable, or if you can get to work, then mentally, and I think mental health is labelled wrong. It's really an emotional well-being. We need to help people become more emotionally resilient and be able to process their emotions, because when we do that, we get physiologically stronger individuals that want to actually go at life in a more positive manner. So we're really looking to create that education across the UK and expand globally.
That's so great. I'll be following you, as I do. I have you on notify. You're on, like, if you post, I get notified right away, because I don't want to miss any of them. No, I don't want to miss any of them, because they're highly informative. So,
amazing.
I love your work, Gary. I love all you're doing, and you'll stay on with me for a minute after we hang up here. But
absolutely.
Thank you everybody for watching and listening. Thank you, Gary, for being here and sharing your wisdom, and appreciate your willingness to do this. You rock.
Thank you. Pleasure.
All right. Take care, everybody, and we'll see you soon.
Bye.
Just got to find out how to turn the damn thing off. 1 second here.